So, hello everyone. I am Rebecca of Rebecca Miller Editorial, and today is going to be a little different because I get to interview one of my lovely colleagues in the book industry. And as one of the growing industry markets in the book world is the audio world. So, there's basically no better time to start thinking about whether to have an audiobook to accompany your manuscript. So today I've invited the lovely Elliott Frisby of Monkeynut Audiobooks to come in and chat to us about all things audio and impart some of his wisdom. So, hello, Elliott.
Hello, how are you?
I am good, thank you very much. Very
I'm
well.
loving,
And
I'm
yourself?
loving that you think I've got wisdom. That suddenly made I was fine until you said that, and suddenly I'm nervous.
I know the pressure, the pressure. But the thing is, it's totally fine because I don't know anything at all about audiobooks. So I'd be absolutely overwhelmed to hear anything you can offer us today. And as you said, it's just all fascinating information. So I guess rather than me wittering on, it's probably better for you to talk about yourself and the audio and a bit more about yourself at Monkeynut Audio.
Okay, yeah. So basically, I've been working in audio and the music industry side of things for about 22 years. Well, it is 22 years, just over now. Um, and it all started off, when I sort of left home in Southend at 16 with a guitar and some clothes, and got in my first semi-pro band, and then went from there. I've always had a love for audio, so I was one of them guys who I was always sort of studying the voice and studying how it can reach through, because music and spoken word. I mean, even as a kid, there was this like audio book when it was on cassettes. It was called Storyteller. I'm a Storyteller. It had Captain Bones in it. I remember that. That was awesome. But they really reached me. They really reached me, and I've sort of I always find that it's great to have that. You can use them for learning. You can use them for escapism. It was wonderful, and yeah. So I basically through the years went in that direction. Lucky enough to do some cool gigs as well. Playing, to play guitar for Robin Gibb. I've performed all around the world and produced music and TV adverts and of course Monkeynut Audiobooks is actually Monkeynut Audiobooks and Sound. So the sound side of it is that we can create music for TV adverts, jingles, film, of course, but also our team also create really exciting music for audiobooks as well. Now, music doesn't always lend itself to audiobooks. You've got to be very careful because music for audio, and this is really important, has to be timeless. If the music doesn't complement it in a timeless way, just don't do it. It's as simple as that. But if you did something like one of our releases recently, Sunshine Hill, it's got a full music, almost like a Peter and a Wolf sort of music score going through it.
Lovely.
That's timeless,
Mm.
and that works there. So yeah, we have a hothouse for sort of high definition audio. Really, our tagline is that we create audio that keeps people listening, and thoroughly love what we do.
Well, it sounds like you guys are totally passionate about what you do, and like just the enthusiasm from speaking to you now is brilliant. And I love audiobooks as well. I try and listen to them when I go running, and I remember, I swear I must have fallen in love with them when I was used to travel down to London to visit my dad. We'd sit on the coach and I'd put on all the I think it was the Sherlock Holmes mystery. So that kind of got me into my specialism of crime, and
Do you like Sherlock Holmes?
I do.
I'm a fanatic about Sherlock Holmes. I've just listened to all of like 60 hours of oh, what's his name, QI.
Hi.
So again, Stephen Fry.
Yeah.
Yeah, reading all of the Sherlock Holmes, they're absolutely
Oh.
great. And I was also pleased to hear that you listen when you go running, because that's what I do as well. It's
Hmm.
great. Switch off, bang. Yeah, no,
Yeah.
it's great.
It's brilliant, especially if you've got like a high intensity thriller. You start to think, oh god, I've got to run, and it's you got to go faster and faster. It's not working quite so well. I'm listening to Poirot at the moment, so that's a bit more chilled out. But I'm hoping that I'll find some sort of action thriller next to hopefully work along. But maybe one of your authors, who knows? So I guess like audio, well, like I mean, publishing itself can be quite complex, especially if you're doing it yourself as a self-publisher or an indie author. So, why do you think it's worth an author thinking about publishing an audiobook at the moment?
Well, it's 2020, isn't it?
Mm.
Before we even get going, it's 2020. There is so many. Mm, uh, this is like a whole interview within itself.
Yeah.
So I'm going to have to like chop it all down, okay,
Mhm.
and do it as quick as I can. So basically, People are busy. People have busy lives. Okay, books will never get beaten. You will never take away books. You can't beat a paper in your hand. I love that. I've got a few books by my bed, which I sort of diving into, but I've usually got like 3 audiobooks on the go. I've usually got one for sort of business and learning and education, where if I'm doing a cooking or something like that. Then I've usually got some like fantasy and magic and illusion when I'm out running. And basically, there is your target market around the world, okay? Around the world, there is a target market for your book in audio, okay? One of my favorite games is if you're on a bus or you're on the tube or something like that, you can actually just watch people with headphones in, and you can tell whether they're listening to music or audiobooks.
Yeah.
It's one of my little games. I've actually asked someone before, and I was
Yeah.
right.
Did
I've
you
just
ever?
I've done that. Yeah, I'm that weird guy. But basically, now it's really good because it also works for your brand as well.
Mm.
I mean, what a better way than if you're doing, say, I don't know, like online courses, or if people are meeting you face to face, or they're seeing you on television, or they're seeing you on YouTube or social media, all these wonderful platforms. Okay, they've had a taste of you. They want you. That's what they want. That's what the sell is. The sell is you, and you have the ability to go up and put your voice out there. Now, let's just say that you aren't actually a narrator yourself, but you could actually be, you can choose in a wealth of narrators. Please be careful, because it's either good or it's very poor. Simple as that. Trust me, and don't just go. We'll talk about this another time, but don't just go buy a demo. You need a sample of your book, but to something to represent you. Okay. And the other thing as well, what a wonderful way to shout about you and your brand as well. So let's just say that let's just say social media, and you're thinking, what social media should I put out? Take a little clip of your audiobook, under 59 seconds, get it on Insta, with your book cover, and say, really cool, I wanted to share this taken from my book, but the bottom line is that that's the world we are in, and people are on the go. So do an audiobook, but remember that it is representing you and your brand, and that you must have good quality. Imperative.
Yes, I like, for example, you can only make your first impression once, so you don't want people to think, oh, I can't really hear what they're saying, or that the narrator doesn't really gel with what I'm listening to. I can see how that really works. So I guess, is audiobook publishing something for any author to pursue, or is there certain genres that fit better, like you mentioned, perhaps like maybe business ones, or something like fantasy, or yeah.
Okay, I do like that question. I like your questions. They're slightly different from people usually ask. Like I tapped on earlier on, I think there is a market for every audiobook. You see, you can't, if you do hear people say, oh, there isn't a market for it. Well, if there isn't a market for it, then you haven't found it. All right, it's quite as simple as that. Let's just say I like cooking. All right, but I'm not going to sit down. I'm not going to listen to an audiobook about cooking. But you know what? I know loads of people, okay, male and female, and kids who will, okay. They will listen to it, okay, but I won't. There is if you've got a passion and you've gone through the right procedure to get your audiobook there, so you've got the high quality, you've had it great, you've had it quality controlled, you've had a great editor do it before it's even got to that process. They're pointing at you there. Then basically, you've got an audience. Otherwise, you wouldn't have written it in the first place. What it may boil down to is that you may need to consider how you approach narrating the book. So if you've got something in, let's just say it's a very monotone, factual kind of book, and there's nothing wrong with that, okay? Let's just say it's the dictionary, all right? If I just went, A, apple, that's going to get incredibly tedious by the time you've got to the 10th A. But what you can do is, I bet you I can find someone who would do that dictionary incredibly well. I know I can think of like a few of our narrators already, okay? Because they can put it across. So whether you've got to make sure you've got the right person to do that book. So yes, I think there is.
So would you say that, if you're an author, would you automatically think you should hire someone else to do the narration, or should you do it yourself?
Well, you need to be advised, first of all, and you need to be honest. and you need to be honest, okay? So I've had to have this conversation so many times, you see. So for me, I'm all about serving the author. That is imperative. We've got to make sure that everything they put across comes across well, and that's because the bottom line is that people are buying your book off the sample button.
Mm.
So someone said to me once, they said, "Oh, can think about the audio book?" I was like, "Oh, okay, yeah, cool. Let's talk more." They said, "Well, I've already got one out there, and it's really really great." I was like, "Why are you talking to me then?" And I said, "Send me the link," and I listened to it. I was like, "That's why you sent it to me." Because I'm not going to say where they got it made up. I'm not going to say that. All right, let's just say it's a popular little short phrased answer. But I listened to it. There was hiss in the background and like that. And I was and like you're going to sell that to your mates. You're going to sell that to your first 50 odd people who are going to go and buy it. But at the end of the day, you've got to make sure that whether it's you or someone else, when people hit that sample button, which is basically the blurb of a book, that what they are actually doing is they listen and go, that sounds fantastic. Now you may be the most passionate person in the world, and I've said this to people before, but I've had to say, look, I always make them read it to me before I get them in the studio, because I don't want to put out anything which doesn't represent our company well, and represent the author well, of course. And I have to say, look, inside your head, you're really passionate, but it's not coming out the mouth. It's just not what you do. So let's explore avenues. So the truth is that you need to consider it. You need to be honest. You can record yourself down on the phone, which is a very free way of doing it. You can send it to people who you do not know, like friends of a friend of a friend, and say, listen to that. Does it sound crap? If it sounds crap, they'll tell you, because they've got no time for it. Almost like you're doing a quality control before you even get to the start of recording.
So I
Does
guess
that answer
sorry, go on.
Does that answer your question?
Very much so, very much so. And I guess even if you're not necessarily prepared or to read the whole thing, you can maybe just say, "I'll just do the introduction as it is part of you as an author," but then have a narrator do the rest.
You see, this shows what your experience is here, because you're absolutely right. And that's something that I was going to touch on later on, is that it's if people are struggling to read, or they can't get them. And also that's another reason, going back to your first question, I'm just going to jump back a minute, when you're saying why people should do an audiobook. You have to remember that some people do struggle to read. Okay, how many people out there are struggling to read? How many people out there are blind? How many people are we? You can't just shut them off. With the audiobooks, give that. There's a massive percentage in the world where you say, look, I can now reach out and you can enjoy this book. Okay, so anyway, jumping back, what were we talking about?
Reading bits of it, but have someone else read something else.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so I've done that quite a few times, where like a publisher might have contacted us and said, look, we've got a narrator doing this book. Can you come and do it? But we want to have them do the front and back. Okay, it's a nice little personal touch. It's a nice thing to do. Often in business coaching books and things like that, you often find that they have key points in the book as well. So obviously it's quite good to have a narrator do it up to there, and then the author can actually do the key points. So they get that kind of passion across, which also means that at the beginning, in the introduction, it says you are listening to written by narrated by Joe Bloggs and author's name. So again, it's good for marketing there.
That's brilliant. Oh, brilliant. So is it easy to publish an audiobook?
Yeah, in a nutshell. Anyone can put an audiobook out there. The question is your audiobook going to do any work? Is it going to get anywhere? It's the same, like it's when you're editing a book. There's so many self-publishing things out there. You can go. I know people who have paid thousands and thousands just to get a book out there, and it's good for their ego, but they're not selling anything. I think that, but from there are sort of distribution sites where you can get your audiobook out to the world. That's definitely available. But at the same time, with you can go to something directly to say Audible, for example. Now, Audible, if they do their exclusive rate, you're getting like 40% back, okay? But if you go non-exclusive, you're also able to get it on all the other platforms out there, where people say, are people buying from these platforms? Well, my response would be, well, why are they there? They wouldn't be there. unless unless they are. So yeah, you can just easily upload it, but I think that it's good to have a little bit of support behind you when you're putting out these books. So we put out audiobooks for people. We do some like bit of online marketing, and we can handle that. And some people, they're just like hate technical stuff. So we help them out as well. So the answer is yes, as long as you've got all the it's a bit, you have to get your head around it, okay? But generally there are these sites, it's fairly straightforward. You go on, upload your imagery, which needs to be square instead of rectangle, let's point out, and then you upload your intro, your outro, your files, and your sample. The sample would be a separate file that you need to upload, but I stress this, you need to have some support behind you to have your successful audiobook. Because if you just say, oh yeah, I've done an audiobook and I've uploaded it, well, great, that now you're in the world of millions and millions. Like, it's basically just like being a recording artist saying, oh, I write songs as good as Ed Sheeran. And then you go and get lucky. It's not gonna happen. Do you know what I mean?
You have to have that. It's like the story doesn't end with just you creating the file. It's the same with physical books or like ebooks. It's like there's so much more hard work that you need to do, and after that to kind of make it a success, whatever way you define success, really. So I guess like like self-publishing in that way is such a long journey. So I don't know, like when should you start thinking about an audiobook, if that's something you're interested in? Like, do you start thinking about it the moment you finish your written thing, or is it a bit further on in the production process?
Yeah, I mean, it's another great question, Rebecca. It's another great question, because like I say to people, like when I say to authors, all right, or if you're a recording artist, you have to see yourself as a business. Okay, it's as simple as that. If you've got a business, so if you say like at Monkeynut here, or your editorial service, okay, you have a very, very clear direction of where you want to go. All right, you have, right, this is what I am, this is what the image is, this is where I want it to go. After we've done that, that's going to happen, and hopefully that will happen, then we'll go in that direction. But if it doesn't happen, it's okay, because we're backing off, we can go off in that direction there. When you're writing a book, it's your business. So if you do it properly, you say, right, this is my business, the brand looks like this, okay, and my revenue streams can be print, audio, courses, talks, okay, public readings, okay. So for me, I would not put it at, when you're creating the audiobook, I wouldn't say, right, writing the book itself, I wouldn't say, right, I now need to create an audiobook, write it in a way for an audiobook. You've got to write great content. But once you've written the great content and you are fully happy with where it's going, or when it's going through the editorial stage, you can now be thinking about the marketing, you can now be thinking about your avenues, you think of your product as a business. Rebecca, will you excuse me a second? I've got to let my dog in there.
Yeah.
Hello. There's a good boy. Well done. We got a sorry about that. We got a 14-week-old puppy, golden retriever. He's lovely. He's very good. He's lovely.
Does he have an opinion on audiobooks?
He does. Denver, what do you think? Here he comes, Philly. What do you think to audiobooks? 3, 4, 5. Oh, did you hear that? Did you hear that? He wagged his tail 5 times, which I think it means create a good quality audiobook.
Yeah. I totally agree. Well, what were we saying about? Oh, well, when you should think about publishing an audiobook. So does it matter? Does it need to? Let's say an author's published a series of audiobook of crime novels, for example, and they're now on book 3, but they haven't thought about an audiobook before. So does it matter that if they decided to start audio versions of book 1 now, even though it could be 3D?
Oh no, absolutely not, because we like I said, we work with a lot of big players, and celebrity names and bits and pieces like that, but their books have usually already been out there. Their books are already out there, but perhaps like the publisher's now thinking, oh, hang on, right, we're now going to invest, what should we invest in now? Well, that book, and so they then come to us. In many ways, it's quite cool because you're getting a second hit, aren't you?
Yeah.
You've had your initial launch of your book. So we're doing an audiobook for someone at the moment, and the book and the audiobook is going to be completed at the same time.
Mhm.
but we are keeping it 6 months apart before we publish the and we don't do print. We don't publish print. Someone else publishing the print. We're publishing the audiobook. But
Mhm.
what we are doing it 6 months different. And it was actually his request when we talked about it and
Mhm.
we discussed it in detail. Because what you can effectively do is you have your first hit, your first market of the book, then you're re-pushing the audiobook. But with the audiobook, you're also supporting it back to the print version
Yeah.
as well.
Mm. Oh, okay. So could serializing books work? I mean, like podcasts are hugely popular. So would you ever suggest serializing a book as a sort of maybe a marketing strategy or even just like a proper format?
Yes, I'm 100% sure. What do you mean by serializing?
So, for example, like you have the book at bedtime on the BBC, where they do a couple of chapters and they read a couple of chapters of those. I don't know if it's every night or every week or something like that, but they basically do a few of those every night. So, would that kind of work as a sort of potential format for an author, maybe?
Yeah, I think that's a really good idea. I think it would work. Well, you could do something like that as a podcast.
Hmm.
You could do that within a podcast, but you couldn't just do a podcast of one of your chapters. That would
Yeah.
be a bit naff. I don't think that would really work because you're just giving the book away really slowly, and like I would have moved on to 10 other books by chapter two. But what you can do is let's just say that you, as the author, was doing the podcast, and you were building up your brand
Yeah.
and your name. Then what you could effectively do, say, right, I'd like to read you a chapter from my audiobook,
Mhm.
sorry, from my book now,
Mhm.
and they get a flavour of it. And then, of course, what you can do from there is actually be saying, and of course, you can hear the full audiobook.
Mhm.
Now you can
Wow.
download that. That's available.
Yeah.
So there is strategy behind
Mhm.
everything. Of course, we know that the format works because it happens on um, like Radio 4, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Where tune in next week for another part of blah 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 blah
Yeah.
blah. So yeah, So yes, I think there is,
Mm.
but you got to be careful not just to be sort of giving it away, but certainly use it as a marketing tool.
Mm.
And I'm sure that if I thought, because you just threw that one on me, I'm sure that if we were sitting around the table and we were brainstorming, then
Yeah.
yes, I'd definitely be able to come up with some ideas there.
Oh, brilliant.
But but yeah, it's ticking my box saying yes, but there are a lot of be
Mm.
carefuls in there.
Mm. Okay, I like that. Some warning. Well, that's the thing. That's why we're talking to you about it because you know these sort of things. So if like obviously people who are listening thinking right, brilliant, I need to do an audiobook. Is there anything they should be thinking about as they're writing? Like if they're still writing their manuscript, is there anything they should be thinking about when they're writing that will help them at a later point for the audio?
No, we're not messing up. We're not messing with a creative brain. All right. No. Just be creative. Write your book. There is. If it's not you, then there is somebody who can put your book across.
Hmm.
All right. I've just done a book for HarperCollins, for example, which had five narrators in it. There is a way of creating something. You just focus on a good book. What I would strongly suggest, and actually, I'm firing this over to you here.
Okay.
Is that you have to have it has to be really well edited. It has to be.
Mm.
And the reason why is because if it's not edited well, and if you're and edited in the genre, then what's actually going to happen is that you won't read well.
Mm. Yeah.
We've had it recently. I mean, I'm not going to. I would never say any names. I actually have a strict confidentiality policy of when they're in the booth, whatever said in the booth stays in the booth. No, I do.
Yeah,
I've even signed it. I've had people sign it before because you'll be amazed at the stuff I hear. You really would,
mm,
and my team. But what you'll so I suppose for me, I would just focus on creating a great book. Go to the editor, okay, and be really clear with them, okay. So
mm,
they choose the right editor and make sure that the book they are about to read or have read is a nice flowing book.
mm,
Okay, because what I was about to say earlier on is that we have many books. One that we did recently, we had I think I counted 90 edits.
mm,
90. Now, there's always going to be we're only human, right? There's
mhm,
always going to be some. But I was sitting and I have my pad and I flag it. as I'm literally this is what I do. I'm reading the script if I'm producing, and I'm writing as we go along. Yeah, and there was quite a few there.
Mm.
Sorry, my dogs are sort of licking the wall. Hey, you. Um,
That's okay. Well, no,
so make,
that's interesting
yeah,
to hear, really, because
that's important.
pardon? Yeah, well, it's interesting to hear because one of the things I suggest to authors who are like they've finished their manuscript and they're thinking, oh right, I need to start revising it, or they've I'm trying to revise it a number of times and they just need to edit it one more time, is to read it aloud to themselves, because then obviously you'll be able to hear that flow much more than you would do if you're just reading it through your mind's eye, because your mind obviously puts in things that you that may not necessarily be there, but when you read it out, you'll if you find you're stumbling over it, then obviously something's a bit clunky, or the punctuation's not right, or the phrasing just sounds weird. So it makes it's hopefully, though, the plan would be as a good editor for that to come before they get to the audio process.
Oh, it has to be. It has to be. I've actually turned down audiobooks because I didn't want to take their money, because I knew that they wouldn't be happy because of where the manuscript was. They edited it themselves and they got a friend to edit it, and you could tell, and it just shows they're not taking what they do seriously. And I know it's a case where it can get expensive, and people, you have to pay to get stuff like this done. But for me, the way I look at it, and the reason why I say I look at it like this, because I've always lived like this ever since I was younger. If I couldn't afford something, I wouldn't go out to restaurants. I wouldn't go here. I wouldn't go there. And that money I would put in a pot till I had enough money, and I would then pay for it. And then you've got a good product, right? Everyone's different, so I'm not saying that's the right way. But it's interesting when you said about reading out loud, because leading up to doing an audiobook, especially if it's a big book, if it's an author reading their own or their own experience, I make them read out loud for half an hour every single day, non-stop. And then by the time they get to the actual recording day, I get them to read for an hour non-stop. You see, because when you're in a booth, and you're recording, you've got a lot to get out, and you need to, and it's a lot of fatigue, that's working the muscles. So we do like a warm up. Sometimes we do like warm ups with our authors as well, make sure their voices are all warm, etc.
No, that makes a lot of sense, and I guess it's also because if you are kind of tripping over your words and stuff, it'll take longer to record, will it not? Like, how long does it take to kind of record an average length book?
Well, there isn't really an average length
No,
book.
that's true. I walked into a trap there.
Yeah, you did walk into a trap. So basically, if you think about it, if you've got a 6-hour book, reading at, say, between 2 to 2.5 words per second, say, then you've got to think that there are lots of trip ups and editing that's required. So I won't go into too much detail. We have our way of working, which works really, really well. We're not a stop and start. We go with the flow. It's how we get great response, great reactions within the book and from the listeners. But basically, if you account for let's just say it's going to be hours more than you think it's going to be, unless you are a professional narrator, because you got to rest the voice as well. Have little breaks. But then I had one guy. I'll do a shout out to one of our narrators, Angus King, Scottish guy, and he just come in and just knocks it out the floor. Like, he just comes in. The guy's just got the gift. Yeah. And he's phenomenal. And there were minimal edits required. But the editing stuff, I don't know if you're going to be asking about editing. Is that on your notes?
Well, editing is just as important, so I'm more than happy to. Yeah, sure. Chat about editing, because that's another aspect, isn't it? It's not just the recording, is it? So. No,
editing is key. Like, editing is really, really essential, and you've got to have a good editor. So the editor needs to know how natural to make the breaths, whether you automate the breaths, whether you take the breaths out, when to take the breaths out. If and I'm just talking of breaths here for a minute, like someone was breathing in exactly the right places, it was great, but their breathing was just ugly. It was awful. So we had to take it out. But kind of I'm not going to say what book it is, but there was one time when I replaced their breaths with other breaths from someone else.
Ooh.
I got a permission first
Yeah.
because the thing is that the book needed the breath,
Mm.
but their breath was just so ugly, that we wouldn't keep it in, and like that were the words I used to that person. So, um, but the editing process, that is a really fine tooth comb. I did an interview with um, Gabe Wicks, who's the vice president of HarperCollins Christian Publishing in Nashville,
Mm.
and we were talking about this side of things, and it's really essential because little things about gaps. So some people might talk and they might talk really, really quickly, and then they move on to the next paragraph where
Mm.
you have to go through a fine tooth comb, and you have to edit that, and you have to move it across and make sure it's a. And there's, I mean, I could literally go on and on and on about editing. There is so much, and mastering as well. My goodness,
Mm.
mastering as well.
Yes, so well, I mean, there's so many different parts, and I guess when you think about that, you've got to think it seem quite overwhelming for like a potential new indie author. And I guess as there's so many parts and it's so skilled a job, lots of authors will be thinking, oh, this is going to be quite expensive, which is totally justifiable for the amount of skill that's needed. But are there any ways that authors can kind of make a sort of economic choices in how they approach an audiobook? So for example, is there anything they can do that can help keep costs down their side but still produce a book that they're incredibly proud of? Because that's the point, really, isn't it?
Okay, well, I'm a big supporter of of narrators and using professional narrators, not just because it really awakens the voice and the book, but also keeps sort of the industry strong. Big believer on that. However, a big if you can narrate the book well yourself,
Mm-hmm.
that will save you save you money.
Mm-hmm.
But it also depends on the type of book that it is. So if you're reading something in the land of fantasy and you've got these voices, unless you're an actor, I won't go anywhere near it. I think that reading it well will keep the editing side of things down,
Mm-hmm.
and and preparing that will keep it down because that will take the studio time down.
Mm-hmm.
Now, there might be some people who see this and say, "Oh, well, do it themselves."
Mm-hmm.
Fine, go and do it themselves. Good luck. Because, but the thing is, I say this: there is a reason why, like people like like Monkeynut Audiobooks and maybe some other companies. The reason why they're used, um, there is a reason why people like Bonnier and Penguin and HarperCollins and all people like that. There's a reason why they use them is because they go to the experts of to do a great job. And if you're going to have a house built, for example, you're not just going to go and get a load of bricks and some blue tack and sort of stick them together, are you?
Mm-hmm.
Or watch a couple of YouTube videos and off you go. What you would do is you would get an expert in because you want it to be secure.
Mm-hmm.
And it's exactly the same with writing a book, editing a book, publishing a book,
Mm-hmm.
creating your audiobook, publishing your audiobook. You want it done the best way because at the end of the day, if you don't do it the right way, what's happening is you're going to spend years, weeks, months, years, whatever, creating a book, paying money to get it edited, and you're going to fall on the final hurdle. And people will tell the difference.
Mm-hmm.
When they hear it, they will know the difference.
Mm-hmm.
So, no, please, Karen.
Oh, I was just going to say, because like another factor I guess in at the moment of like production wise is like 2020 throw everything at us pandemic style. So like for example, is it has that made it difficult for more authors to like record their books this year, or
No. I think there are more people trying to do it. Actually, I know for a fact there are more people like buying a USB microphone and doing it themselves. And the reason why I know this is we do like you do an editing service. We do an editing and mastering service as well, where people send us files, and many times they've been sent. During lockdown, I've had so many files sent to me saying, "Save this, can you save this?" And luckily we most of the time we can. There's only been a couple of times where I said, "Well, just re-record it and then we make it great." But most of the time they sort of end up coming in and doing something. But lockdown, yeah, it did, because obviously we it's quite an intimate situation with an audiobook. So it's not like when you're creating music and you've got like a sound booth here and there right over there. You've got to have that intimate connection when you're producing an audiobook, is that's really important. You've got to have a clear understanding of how they're feeling and where they want to go. But we do at Monkeynut Audiobooks, we do location recording. So we have these large bespoke booths, which we have designed ourselves and created, and they're very, very popular. They get used a lot. So what we were doing is we were doing a lot of we had a lot of deadlines we had to hit, and people couldn't come to us. So the audio world was for us was either going to go and just flat out, or we were going to save it. And I'm a grafter. I'm a fighter. I always have been. And so for me, I got the booths, and I just invested a lot of money. We made a lot more of them, and we were lucky. And I'm proud to say, and I am proud to say, we hit every single one of our deadlines. And
Yes.
And whilst keeping social distancing, and being able to go back to the studio and create and mix and master and all of that, the audio.
Oh, brilliant. So do you think more people will be using that sort of location technology then moving on, or as opposed to coming into the studio, or
maybe I think that people love, so we've got like the studio, which is like the sort of more for the music or the singing and dancing, but then we have some really nice kind of like, I'd say kind of like high-end kind of intimate settings, which people love, and authors just come back time and time and again because that's what they love. I don't think you can beat it. I don't think, because some people, they like to get away and be in a workplace. So they're saying, right, I'm going here, and what I'm doing here is I'm being looked after, going to get some nice food, going to get loved and cared, and talk about my book, and create a hot book, fill in the blank. But at the same time, if we're working with celebrities or people on the go, or CEOs or something like that, they're on the go. It's very normal for us to go into a hotel. But yeah, we got quite a few in, and I think that it's an option that people who feel uncomfortable traveling will certainly want to use more. But I don't know. I think it would be a little bit more. I don't think it'll be a lot more.
Oh, that's cool. That's that's interesting. So I guess looking forward, what do you see? How do you see audio moving forward?
I see it as, I'm guessing that people are going to start rivaling, because it's already happening, rivaling Audible. I think that's going to happen. I think because the percentage rates are ticking people off. And I think Audible would do wise to, even though they're dominating them, because they're dominating the market, make it better rates for the author. I think that's important. I think that, like local shops, I think people will want to buy from other more local streams. When you say audio, I'm guessing you mean audiobooks.
Yeah. I mean that. Yeah. Yes, but it's only because I was thinking about. I saw the other day that how Spotify are kind of thinking about moving into the same way, and obviously with the CDs, they moved on to the digital iTunes, and then now we've got the streaming services, and how whether that's a positive or more of a negative for the author or artist at the time. So how kind of like, is that something that you could see happening with audiobooks? Or
well, I think audiobooks, it's only going to be on the incline. What the industry needs to be careful of, though, is that it doesn't lose value. That's really, really important, because if you think about it, like, and I'm not going to go down this argument now. I'm really not. But if you've got some, like, you're just playing with your hair. Look, I mean,
I just saw it sticking up like that. Sorry.
It's like you're sort of rubbing it in, going, hey.
No. I can just see. I've just got horns. That's all.
If like with an artist who spent like so much time creating a record, and then having to have like however 33,000 streams, whatever it is, to get a cup of coffee. I think you need to be careful with the audiobook world, because around the world, creatives around the world are they spend their life doing this. They spend a lot of money doing this, and a lot of training. People go to businesses, people who work in business, they go through just so much training to get there. And it's the same with the arts, and within the arts, authors are sitting in there, and it's important that is supported, because it's a massive revenue to the economy. So I'd like to think that, and all it takes are the big players just to say, right, this is this is what's available, this is how much it costs,
Mm.
And that's what people pay.
Yeah.
But I think that the audio will get bigger. I think we'll be seeing more platforms. I think there'll be more bigger platforms, and I'd like to think that there'll be some kind of, and probably if someone sees this, they might jump on this, some kind of sort of widget or something app you can put on your own site where you can actually be where people can just buy it, because obviously they can download it from your site anyway,
Yeah.
and then maybe you have your own little personal branded Audible.
Mm.
You know, your own little thing. So yeah, it will keep inclining. I think that there'll be new ideas to rival some of the stuff that's out there, and I think most of it isn't going to work. But then we'll probably see a couple of new players in the foreseeable future.
So the future looks rosy.
I think future looks very rosy. But I have to stress that audiobooks is so basically like audiobooks is like this. Book sales are a little bit like this, yeah. But you haven't got this without the book, yeah. Okay, and where this could sort of eventually, this will never go anywhere. This is just because you can't, something that we've had since when we first were able to like draw pictures on the wall and create, we were able to communicate in a sort of pen, and that will never go anywhere. And it's essential that we keep that alive as well. So hopefully, I'm hoping it'll be a way of audiobook supporting books as well, where as a unit they can just get stronger and support the authors.
Well, I think that's the thing. It's stories, isn't it? The ability to tell stories, and it's the different formats of how that all happen. And I think it's really exciting to see all these different innovations and the different markets and everything moving forward. But we're never going to beat the love of sharing different stories with different people, because that's just how humans interact, isn't it? Really, how we understand each other and how we understand different people's experiences. So I think I'm very excited to see how it goes. So yeah.
Well, with the storytelling, that's where podcasts is going to get bigger and bigger.
Yeah.
Podcasts are great, but podcasts are great for also selling, marketing what it is that you've got out there. You see, and that's where that storytelling, that's kind of almost like the sitting around a campfire, isn't it?
Yeah.
That podcast. But the audiobook world, in summary, I think that it will develop and do well as long as you do your audiobook right and don't cut corners. Then you will always have something that you can constantly be pushing out a few times a year, something you can be talking about without having to think of new content. So yeah, it looks peachy.
I think, and that sounds to me like the perfect way to round us this conversation off. So thank you very much, Elliott, for chatting to us about all things audio. I feel very enlightened, and I'm sure loads of authors who are watching now are thinking, right, I know what I need to do next. Audio time. So I'll pop all the details at the end of the video to get in touch with Elliott if you're interested, and I'm sure he'll answer any questions that you might have as well. So lovely speaking to you, Elliott. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your time. You're great. Thanks so much.